Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining Fast Forward's webinar, Is Your Sales Style Killing Your Business? My name is Maria Zorzos, and I will be your moderator for today's session. Before we begin, I'd like to take you through some housekeeping items. Please be sure to turn up the volume on your phone or PC so you can hear our speaker clearly. Also, feel free to submit questions during the webinar using the question chat functionality. We will dedicate 15 minutes at the end of the webinar for Q&A, but you can start queuing up questions at any point. We are also recording today's session and will make the link available 24 hours post-event via email and post it to our website, www.fastforward.com. Due to overwhelming demand, we have a slight delay in getting some of the survey results out. However, many of you should check your email for your profile type. Next, I'm happy to introduce you to our speaker for today's webinar, Tara Pollack. Tara is head of our customer experience practice. She has trained tens of thousands of sales and customer-focused employees across all business channels, is dedicated to professional development and employee empowerment. Tara, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to have you on this webinar today because how people sell and who they sell to is one of my nearest and dearest passions. So we thought, in the spirit of getting to what your sales strengths are, and if you're doing it well and how you can do it better, we thought we'd really start at the beginning of that. So we wanted to take you through how we approach customer experience. So we asked you a question when you took your surveys and when you registered, which was, who owns the customer experience? We got a lot of really great answers from that. Some of the answers were sales owns it, which makes sense because a lot of us are salespeople. Some of us said customers own it, which also makes sense because it is their experience. Some of us said the entire business owns it, which also makes sense, doesn't it? Because the business is what really drives how people are interacting with our products, with our people. Some of us also said that frontline customer-facing service people own the customer experience. Well, what's right? Actually, all of those are right. But the most right answer that we believe is customers actually own their own experience. But how we all play into that experience is that us as companies, as business, as individual contributors to their experience really create the conditions for it. Now, what we wanted to take you through really quickly before we get to the most exciting part, which is you and how you sell, we wanted to look at what actually plays into creating the conditions for a customer's experience. So if you look at the business level, you'll see on the screen there's this sort of this pyramid, kind of a cut-off pyramid. Now, just as a note, that is not meant to symbolize the hierarchy of experience. It's just mainly to show how wide the reach is in that area. So if you look at the business portion of it, employees, managers, and leaders all really drive the business end of creating conditions for customers' experience. And what do we mean by that? Leaders make a lot of the decisions that drive policies around how employees can or cannot talk to customers, what they can and cannot do for customers, what the business will allow as far as the bottom line for customers. And of course, managers have one of the toughest jobs within this because they have to convey and translate what employees can and cannot do for customers. Sometimes they have to step in, credit customers. So they really deal in that level of the business. Employees, of course, have the one-on-one interaction with customers. So they're having conversations. When you get down to it, the customer experience is really about the conversations employees are having with customers and the conversation that the business is having with customers. So then we jump to customers. Now, we have both customers and users in the variables that go into a customer's experience. Customers are the ones that are paying for the product or the service. That's how we differentiate them from users. Users can be customers as well. They may pay for it, but they're the ones that are actually interacting with the products and services we're selling them and kind of driving brand value. So then you see brand on the side. What we strongly believe is that the experience and the conditions that your business creates for customers drives the brand. So that's how we approach customer experience. What we want to focus on today, of course, is sales within the customer experience, and how do those two things relate. As we've been going through the journey of looking at customer experience and how to create the best conditions for it, what we've really found is that you can't sell anyone or anything to anyone that does not trust you. So if you as an employee have not, or as a frontline customer-facing salesperson, if you haven't created trust in the conversation you're having with customers, you will not sell them a thing. So that's what we want to look at, is how are you having conversations that either play to your strengths and get to the yes in a sales conversation, and if you're not playing to your strength, how can you? And what exactly is your strength? So before we get to you and the conversations you're having with customers around selling, we want to take a look at our customers just for a moment, just so we can understand them a little bit better. So there was a study done by a customer experience research group called the Temkin Group. Many of you have probably heard of them. They do a lot of polls around customer experience. They do a lot of looking at what behaviors drive good experiences. So we find out a lot of good stuff from them. They asked a very, very fundamental question. I would say it's even the million-dollar question, which is what makes people say yes or no when they want to buy from you. And so what they looked at was really, if you get down to it, what drives buying decisions, purchasing decisions. They found that overwhelmingly, above commercials, above ads, above promotions, above any variable of things, it is the employee that is selling the product to them. So what that means is people that are selling things, having conversations over the phone in retail locations are the #1 factor about whether or not they say yes or no. So what does that mean for us? It means that we, in our sales conversations, whether we're the one selling or if we're managing people that are selling, the reps, the agents, the associates are the #1 factor in getting people to yes. So what's our goal for today? We put this slide in here because I feel like we want you to know that we do have a goal for you. All we want to do is really move the needle for you. So if you're already doing good, that's wonderful. We want to get you to great. If you're doing okay and you feel like you could be doing a little better, we want to get you to good so that you can get yourself to great a little bit later. If you're doing poor, we really hope we can get you to good. So, but we doubt anyone is doing poor at this point. All right, so that's our goal for you. I do want to say before I really jump into the material, we are only going to touch the surface of sales biases or how your style can improve what your strength is. So as we go through today, I want you to know this is very rich content, and it goes very, very deep, and it can help you a lot. So this is something that we hear a lot around town is, were you born a natural salesperson? Why I like this question and why we wanted to start here is because selling and being a salesperson is often looked at, in my opinion, just like singing is. So are you born a naturally good singer? Some would say yes, some would say no. I wasn't born one. I'm chuckling now because I was born a really bad singer. But I hope that if I practiced and I prepped, maybe I could become a talented singer. I don't know. Musicians, they're often thought of, you were born to play an instrument or you weren't born to play an instrument. So selling is really looked at in that same way. We think of people who were, quote unquote, born natural salespeople as being extroverts. We think of people that were, quote unquote, born natural salespeople as being people who are charming, who talk a lot, who are persuasive by nature. And all of that is true. That definitely contributes to selling well. But in that lies a little bit of a problem. What if you weren't born a naturally good salesperson, but what if you have a job that is to sell things to people? Then what do we do? So I myself was not born a natural salesperson, but what we found is that I have particular strengths that actually play into having conversations with people. So I can practice and I can prep and I can get better at it. So that's kind of the way we want you to look at it. If you were born this way, if you were born good at it, wonderful. If you weren't born good at it, it's no problem because we're going to look at how you can do it. So we have this kind of little fun step ladder we wanted to walk us up. So what does make a great salesperson so good? There was a massive study done by a university in the UK called Cranfield School of Management. This is very interesting to me. What they found was they looked at selling situations and isolated selling conversations. So that would be somebody talking to somebody else and trying to get them to buy something. And that could have been a small investment thing, or it could be a large investment thing. So, you know, it could be a cell phone, which is a kind of a commitment monetarily. It could be a house, which is a bigger commitment. Or, you know, it could have been a blouse from a department store. So across all different areas. And what they looked at was, are there actual behaviors that contribute to selling better and behaviors that contribute to selling worse? What they found was, in fact, there are. And there are not behaviors that we always associate with being really successful. So this is what we have in front of you now, this step ladder. So talks a lot. What they found is that is a very extroverted trait, but just talking a lot does not help in selling situations. It doesn't create trust, and it doesn't achieve the confidence that you need to get someone to say yes to you. So now we move to the next one, which is one I personally really like, charming. That helps, but only to a point. So we all want to be charming, and trust me, it never hurts, but it doesn't get you to the yes that you're looking for if you only rely on that. So the next one is one of my personal favorites, authentic, passionate, natural. And we put an exclamation point behind that because it definitely helps to be authentic, to be passionate, and to be natural when you're speaking to people. So I just kind of wanted to unpack that a little bit for us. What we mean when we say authentic is, if you don't particularly like to be the cheerleader type of personality, or, you know, very bubbly, very upbeat, say you're more melancholy, I guess. You have a particular strength in your way of being. You do not have to act like anyone else in any sort of conversation. Say you don't like to smile. And I know you can't see my face, but I am not a huge smiler. It doesn't mean I'm not happy, though. I have to find other ways of conveying that I'm happy, so maybe it's the tone of my voice. If I was to smile at every single person that I came across, I would not be coming across as authentic. I definitely wouldn't be coming across as passionate, because smiling is the least passionate thing in my life. And natural, it's not natural for me to do that. So you get what I'm saying. We all have a personality, and we want to bring that to the table in the most sincere way. The other reason this is very important is because people do not trust you if they sense that you're not being authentic, if they sense that you're not being natural, and if they sense that you're not passionate around what you're trying to sell to them. This is very important. So that definitely helps. But now we move to the last one, which is preparation. More than definitely preparation, and we'll add on to that, practice helps monumentally when you're having selling conversations. So if you haven't done your homework, you're probably not going to create trust and confidence, which is what I keep emphasizing we really want to have you create in a selling conversation. Okay, so what are you going to prepare and what are you going to practice? There's just 4 things, which is really good news. So in conversations that customers have with you when they might want to buy something or have you solve a problem for them, there's only 4 things that they really, really need from you in a conversation. So one of those things is that you listen. So we've put they up there because we're just talking about the collective they that's trying to sell the customer, that will speak directly to you. You listen to the customer. You put yourself in the customer's shoes. You want to be listened to as well. That's the first step in creating trust and confidence. If you're not listening, customers do not think that you've heard what they really need. The second part is know what you're talking about. Know your stuff. So again, put yourself in a customer's shoes. You definitely don't want to buy something from somebody who doesn't sound like they know what they're talking about. And especially when you get into sort of the bigger ticket items, you know, buying a house. You won't buy a house from someone you don't trust. You will not buy a car from someone you don't trust. You won't buy an enterprise suite from someone you don't trust. All right, the third thing is they want you to be logical. So if we put all of this together so far, They want you to listen. They want you to know what you're talking about. And they want you to make sense as you say it. So there's a point A and there's a point B, and they just want you to get there in a way that's coherent and really ties to the path that they're on. And the last thing, and we'll put a trophy behind this because in selling, I think this is sort of the prized piece of it. They want you to solve a problem for them. Now, I know we're talking about selling, so why would we say solve a problem? When you are trying to sell something to somebody, you always want to keep in mind that you're not just selling a thing to them for no reason. They have a problem that they need solved. They need a resolution. They need an answer to a question they have. They want closure on it. So these are the 4 things that customers need from you in a conversation with them to get to the yes. Now, we want to sort of flip the script a little bit. And this is what we're on the webinar for. Maria mentioned the survey that all of you took beforehand. So those results, as she said, will be coming to you pretty shortly. What you did was you took a survey that basically identified where your sales bias lies. And I'm going to get more into that. But first, let me explain to you what we mean by sales biases. So in every conversation that we have, in every conversation that an individual approaches, we have a strength, and that strength is our anchor in the conversation. So this is essentially what would make me an authentic and passionate person, and it would make me be able to be comfortable in this conversation. We all have one that is stronger than the other 4. That's very important. That's why we call it the bias. If I am, say, and again, I'll get more into this, but if I am a socializer, my bias is towards listening. So that's my strength, and I lean to that. Now, the catch comes when you lean too strongly on your strengths. A strength can very quickly move into a weakness if you only keep yourself in that part of it. The ideal customer conversation would have you using your bias, but then also balancing out the other 3 biases. And that's a fairly sophisticated level of selling conversation that you would be having. So before I get into the individual biases and sort of breaking them down, going through the strengths, going through then how they can actually get you into trouble sometimes and how you kind of mediate that and balance them out, I want to just spend a moment talking about why we at Fast Forward really look at people's strengths in order to improve them. What we've seen is that in a lot of training, in a lot of coaching, people generally go for the weakness first. So I'm sure every single one of us at one point or another has been coached by one of our bosses, one of our managers. But the coaching was, you know, Tara, this is what you're not doing right. This is what's wrong with what you're doing. Now, that's important information for me to know. But more important is, what am I good at, and how can I use what I'm good at doing to sort of bridge the gap to what I'm not so good at doing? The strength is the bridge. The strength is what helps people improve what they're not doing well. And this will become more clear as we go through the actual biases. Okay, so we're going to start with the socializer. So when you receive your survey results, if you came out a socializer, this is what this means. Socializers, we have a symbol that's a heart with dots and chemistry, and that's for a reason. Socializers really like to build relationships with people. Socializers really like to talk. Now, that's a huge strength for them, talking, building rapport quickly. A socializer will walk into a room, or a customer will walk into a store or call on the phone, and a socializer will have the customer feeling like they can trust them in, 1 minute flat. They're experts at it. So that's their strength, building relationships. And if you recognize yourself as a socializer, you'll see that you do that probably very well. Also, even if you're not a socializer, think about who's on your team, who you work with. You can recognize this in them as well. A person that always wants to help someone else. So socializers in selling situations can get themselves into trouble in a very specific way. They will sometimes put the relationship before the close. Now, if our paychecks come through commission and our paychecks come through selling things to people, this can get you into a little bit of trouble. So you make a lot of friends, but you don't always hit your numbers. You make a lot of friends, but you don't always make the money that you need to make. So socializers really, really want to look at and focus on how they can use the relationship and the rapport that they've built in order to get to the close. You have to pay attention to the end game a little bit more. That's the socializer. They like to build relationships. Some of you surveyed out as focusers. Now, focusers are a huge asset on a team. And if you're a focuser, what this means for you is that you know a lot. And you really like to anchor your conversations in what you know. So if we look at the socializer really likes to anchor their conversations in the rapport that they're building. They might talk about vacation. They might talk about, how many dogs you have, how many kids you have. The focuser will not be comfortable talking about that at all. The focuser really wants to talk about the problem at hand. The focuser really wants to talk about what he or she knows about the products that they're selling. So if you're coaching a focuser, or if you are a focuser, and you tell a focuser, okay, I need you to connect more with customers. If you connect more with customers, then you will sell them more. A focuser will get very, very worried and very immobilized by that. So what you want to do with focusers is help them to keep their conversations anchored in the information that they know, but help to connect that information to what the customer actually needs. All right, the next bias that we have is the narrator. The narrator is the person who's really good at having a logical talk track. So narrators are very organized in the conversation. They are the ones that get from point A to point B and then all the way to Z. What they're really good at, what their strength is and where they're anchored is in the logic and the organization around what they're saying. How this can get them into trouble, though, is that they do tend to stick to a script. And if that script is not adapted to who they're talking to, it might sound robotic. So that would cause a problem in actually connecting to the customer. So I'm just going to summarize so far the biases that we've talked about, just to highlight the strengths and the differences now that we can see some of the characters that we're playing with. So we have the socializer who's anchored in relationships and wants to build rapport, but sometimes over-talks the sell or shoots past the sell or talks the customer out of the sell because they're focusing on the relationship. Then we have the focuser who really, really likes to know what they're talking about and who does know what they're talking about. They are the person on the team that everyone goes to find out what they need to know. But the problem with a focuser can sometimes be created by only talking about what they know and not actually connecting to what's relevant to the customer. So then, of course, we're coming back to the narrator, and this is the person that is very logical, very organized in their talk track, but sometimes can sound robotic in that talk track and will not veer off of the talk track in order to really invite the customer into the conversation. Now, the very last bias that we have, and I think for salespeople, this is the one that if you look at the word, you will prize over all the rest. This is the closer. So closers are the one that get to the yes in a selling conversation. And they get to the yes very fast, actually. That's their number one agenda. So a closer, if you are a closer, you do have high numbers. You are getting a lot of yeses, and that's wonderful. That's a huge asset for you and for the team, for your team. The problem can come for closers with the amount of sincerity that they do not bring to the table. So closers often will be so preoccupied by their own agenda, which is getting to the close, that they forget that the customer also has an agenda. So that can become the sort of the gap for a closer. How you can really help closers is to have them slow down, invite the customer into the conversation, and remember it's about the customer's agenda. So those are our 4 biases. What we wanted to have you take a look at is who you have on your team or who you are, which your survey will tell you. And then we wanted to give you a sample of how this might look as far as your performance curve and selling more. So what you see on your screen here is the socializer. You can see the heart up in the corner. If you look at the baseline, if you look at the strength of a socializer, remember, a socializer loves to talk to people. They love to build rapport with people. But we're not going to really do as well as we can if we only reach the I talk too much mark. Because as I said, that means you're not actually hitting your goalpost, which is to close and get a yes. So then we kind of move up to the first dash, which is an improvement. Because what you've done here is you're talking as a socializer, but then you're also listening. You're listening, you're talking, you're engaging the customer. So you are hearing what the customer is telling you they need, but you're not maybe registering it fully yet. That's why you're still just kind of the middle of the line on performance. So you're talking and listening, but without a purpose. You're just talking for talking's sake. Now, to get a socializer up to, performance, highest performance standard, selling as much as you can possibly sell as a socializer, you want to help socializers keep building the rapport that they build, keep talking, keep listening, but help them to create a way of understanding what they're hearing. So we say talk and listen with a purpose, but what we're really saying is help them to organize their conversation a little bit better. So you would, in this particular situation, look at a socializer and then look at the other 3 biases and say, okay, so I have a socializer who's doing a really wonderful job at creating rapport with my customers, but this socializer doesn't always sound like she knows what she's talking about. So how do I help this socializer not only talk and build rapport, but sound like she knows what she's talking about? You may have to help her, and I'm using her because I am a socializer, so I'm talking about myself here. You may have to help me learn my products a little bit better. But how I would do that is I would talk through my products, and I would play them out in person because my strength is really interacting with people. So you would have me look at my products, learn them through socializing the product. Then you would move me into the narrator space, which is how do I help this socializer create a more logical talk track? Because now she knows, now she can build rapport, now she sounds like she knows what she's talking about a little bit better, but now I need her to sound more organized. I need her to go from a point A to point B without confusing the customer. What you might have her do is to say, okay, so you're going for the close ultimately. What question do you need answered for yourself in order to move to the next stage of the conversation, which is moving more towards the close? So you might say, when the customer answers the question of how much they're willing to spend, when you hear them say, I'd like to spend $20 today, then you tell the closer, okay, that means you're ready for the next part of the conversation, which is, great, let's go look at what you might want to buy, or let's go look at what you might need. So that would be how you help them to organize it. You create guides throughout the conversation. Now, the last part that you'd want to balance for a socializer is closing to get it to yes. So that you use the guides, say, okay, you have all of your questions answered, socializer. When you get all of your questions answered, you say to the customer, all right, it looks like we've got what you need today. Is that good? You have them close after they have everything done. This helps them to stop talking. It helps them to have used all the information you found out, building the rapport, everything to the advantage to resolve a problem for the customer. So that is just an example of how you would use a bias, which is the strength of the socializer, to the socializer's strength in order to fill in some of the gaps in the conversation for the customer. All right, so what we wanted to show you, I think this is very interesting. Maria mentioned at the beginning that I have worked with tens of thousands of frontline customer-facing employees. And we've actually rolled this out to those employees. And we've rolled these biases out in telesales, in retail sales, so storefronts, in financial services, in all different channels, in all different industries. So these work no matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter if you are an individual contributor or if you manage a team. These are very, very good biases for you to look at, identify, and then start to build on. This is what we find very interesting, though, is that in most organizations, we have found that they are stocked with socializers. And if you think about it, it really makes sense, because if we go back sort of to the beginning of the webinar, when I asked the question, who is a natural salesperson? Are people born natural salespeople? Socializers are hired into selling positions because they are natural people. So that makes sense. So they are extroverted. They like to talk. They build very good rapport. In interviews, they are really winning people over, so they get the job. But what happens then is that when we train those socializers on sales teams, we train them like they're focusers and like they're closers. So we train them as if they are interested in the products and they are interested in just learning the information, and they'll be able to know what to do with that information. And then we train them as if they already know how to close. So why we wanted to show this to you is it may or may not be true for you or for your team or for your organization. Most likely, however, it is. And you want to really start to look at, if you have involvement in training, or if you are being trained to sell, you want to look at, are you a socializer? How is this curriculum geared? And how do I need to actually start socializing how I'm being trained? Because the way you're being trained may not match up with your bias. So, all right. And as we come to the end of this, what we wanted to do was sort of look at how you can actually use what we talked about today. So you can use these biases as a coaching tool if you are a manager or a leader. You can use these biases to create an individual action plan for yourself. If you are an individual contributor and you want to improve your own sales, you can actually look at these biases and say, okay, what am I? What did my survey say I am? And then you start to look at the other three biases and start to figure out ways to balance yourself out. And then, again, to go back to, if you're a leader, you can actually look at the balance on your team. And that will really help you a lot, because then you can start to see, okay, what are people doing? Where is a natural fit for this socializer that I have on my team? Where is a more natural fit for this focuser that I have on my team? So those are some quick and easy ways that you can put these biases to use for you right away. All right, and so just a quick summary. What we talked about today was our approach to customer experience. And why we brought in our approach to customer experience is because selling to people and having conversations with people around what they want to buy from you is a huge part of the customer experience. And if you don't get them to a point where they trust you and have confidence in you, they will not say yes. Then we looked at, why is that so important? It's because 57% of customers make their buying decision based on the rep, the associate, or the agent that they actually had a conversation with. And then we looked at, are you born this way? Are you born good at selling? Or do you need to practice and prep? So the sort of subtle nuance of, even if you were a born closer, which is who we generally think of as the natural salespeople, you may be closing too fast. You may be not courting the customer long enough. You may get a lot of returns. So even if you're born a natural salesperson, you still need to balance it out in the other biases. So then we went through every individual bias, what the strength is, and how they can sort of bridge the gap to sell more and look at their weaknesses. All right, I hope you all enjoyed this webinar, and good luck.
Wow, thank you, Tara. I know you really can go deeper into the subject area, but we really want to leave some time for questions for our audience. So for anyone who has to or would like to submit a question, please do so now. They're starting to queue up. I do have a few that I would like to ask Tara based on our audience's input. The name of the seminar is, why is my sales style killing my business? Tara, what are you finding as people who are longtime salespeople? We feel like we're doing well. What do we need to start doing differently so that this isn't happening?
So I think the main thing that even if you're doing very well as a salesperson right now, which I do believe, probably most of the people on the webinar are, we wanted to help you look at the ways you may be hurting your own numbers and your own sales at this point. So what we mean is you could be selling, 85% of the things that you go out to sell. You could be at 85% of your goal, but we wanted to help you get to 90% or 95%. And the best way to do that is to look at the conversations you're having and to see what's missing from those conversations or what you may be doing too much of. So that's primarily why we say, is your sales style killing your business? It may be working very well for your business, but if you look at the subtleties around how you can balance the conversations you're having, it can work even better for your business.
Thanks, Tara. Another comment is, it seems like you've done a lot of research through Fast Forward. Is this just research, or do you have something that can really help me?
No, it's not just research. We put research behind this so that we can drive the importance of these sales biases and the functionality that they have in performance and bottom line business. What we've found through, massive rollout of these biases is, first of all, individual employees in retail stores or over the phone on telesales, they immediately feel like they can start to identify ways that they can sell more. So that's one thing, is it's an immediate change in the way people look at how they're having their sales conversations currently. The second part is if you happen to work in a sales organization that uses NPS as a guide or as a number metric for success, we've actually, this program has moved NPS high, very high for companies. So we have proven success on NPS improvement. With NPS, your sales numbers are bumped up because when people feel like they're having a better experience, they are more willing to buy from you. So sales numbers also bump up. The other very, very real change that we've seen in organizations that use sales biases is that they have less returns and less customer churn. So people are buying things that make more sense to what they need, which lends to how they're really using things. And that is, if we go back to the beginning, that is brand value for your business or for your company. So it all rests on the conversation, and people stay with you longer, and they return less. They buy the right thing.
Thanks, Tara. One more question. I know you touched on coaching tools. We have quite a few people who really have been trained as new-time sales managers to focus on the weaknesses, and the understanding is that Fast Forward recommends coaching on the strengths. You mentioned your tools. Are there some simple coaching examples you can give me to kind of share how I would go about doing that?
Yeah, I can give you, I gave an example about coaching a socializer or how a socializer's performance could increase or improve. Now, what we can look at, though, another example would be a focuser. So we know a person that we work with quite often. He's a focuser, but he also needs to sell things because that's part of his job. So what we noticed about this individual was in conversations, he would kind of shut off the small talk, so to speak. And he would say, he would go to a customer and he would say, I don't really want to talk about your vacation. I would really like to know what you're doing in the store today. So customers were getting a little put off by this. So we were sort of like, you have to insert your pleasantries somewhere because people need that sort of basic connection with you. What we had him do was look at how he can connect with people using information as his anchor. So he likes information. He likes to talk about what he knows. So what we said to him was, instead of asking people, how are you, when you meet them, why don't you ask people, hi, welcome to the store. Can I pick your brain today? Because pick your brain is more of an information-based entry into a conversation. There's a big difference between asking someone, how are you, and asking someone, which is a socializer's question. A focuser's question would be, can I pick your brain today? And that gets you right on track to talk about the information, but the customer feels like you're really connecting with them. You want to know what they're in there for.
Thanks, Tara. Well, that's the conclusion of our session today. For those of you who did not take the survey, we'd really encourage you to do so. And thank you for joining us. We will follow up with a notification that will alert you to the on-demand recording of today's event so you can review any material you missed, and if you have found it worthwhile, share it with your coworkers. Some people did come in late and are asking for copies of the PowerPoint presentation, and we will make those available as well. Should you want to continue the conversation with Tara and learn more about your sales biases and coaching tools, you can email her and follow her on Twitter. We also provide insightful information on our blog on customaryexperience.com. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing back from you.